Hi everybody, this is Marie from the Innovation Group and welcome to another of our Emerging Leaders of Gaming webinars. I just wanted to give you a brief overview on the functionality of GoToWebinar before we get started. So you should be able to see the PowerPoint presentation that I'm sharing with you, and this slide shows where your various windows are, including panelists, cameras, this PowerPoint presentation, which is available in the handouts window, and the control panel. You can choose to follow along with us to view the presentation or download it directly and go through it at your own speed. The next slide shows how to expand any of these separate windows to go to full screen. Just click on the double arrows on the bottom right corner of your selected window, or to escape full screen, click those arrows again or hit the escape button. You can also minimize and maximize your control panel by clicking the orange arrow at the top. You'll notice that you're automatically muted throughout the webinar, but to ask questions, expand your control panel and look toward the bottom right in the questions section. Just type your question and hit send, and we'll reserve 10 minutes at the end to cover as many questions as possible. If you're on a mobile phone, your functionality will be slightly more limited, but you'll see your menu items at the bottom. To toggle back and forth between panelist cameras in the presentation, swipe from left to right. And to advance through the presentation on your own, since you won't be able to see ours live, swipe down for each new slide. The menu also shows where you can access the presentation, also called handouts, or ask a question. As for frequently asked questions, if you run into any technical issues during this webinar, call the GoToWebinar customer service team at the number that I've been displaying at the tops of all the slides. Also, we'll post a recording of this webinar on our Emerging Leaders page within the next week, so stay tuned for that. And now here's Tom from the Innovation Group to kick things off.
Thank you, Marie. Welcome again to this panel discussion on the evolution of non-gaming amenities, sponsored by Emerging Leaders of Gaming and brought to you by the Innovation Group. My name is Tom Zitt, Executive Vice President of the Innovation Group. I'll be moderating today's webinar. Let's go ahead and get started. Comparing gaming properties today to casinos of the past, it's clear that the overall experience has changed dramatically. As casino games have evolved, so too have amenities. With both destination and regional casinos beginning to add amenities such as brew pubs, social bowling, indoor water parks, Topgolf, and other unique venues and experiences, properties considering amenity development should now, more than ever, focus on differentiated offerings. This webinar will explore the evolution of the non-gaming amenity and what it takes to differentiate gaming properties and attract new customers. We have a set of questions to ask our panelists. We will also be accepting questions from the audience, and we'll leave time at the end for our panelists to respond. With that, we'll introduce our panelists and have them tell us a little bit about themselves. Our first panelist is Tom Wucherer. Tom is principal at YWS Design and Architecture. Tom?
Good morning. As Tom mentioned, I am principal at YWS Design and Architecture. We've been servicing the gaming industry since 2001. Prior to that, I had worked for 13 years under the mentorship of a design build firm here in Las Vegas. We are based in Las Vegas, have a presence over in Asia, but we do work globally. And needless to say, there's no two solutions that are the same. But as the industry keeps evolving, we're having fun helping it shape, and I look forward to having a good chat today.
Thanks, Tom. Our next panelist is Joe Shibeta. Joe is Vice President of Development and Operations for Rush Street Gaming. Joe?
Hello, everyone. I have had the opportunity to be in the gaming business for over 20 years. I've spent many years in my career in operations in table games, slots, food and beverage. Was a director of customer service for many years for Harrah's and Caesars. And in 2009, I joined Rush Street Gaming as we started to build from the ground up casinos in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, and upstate New York. And I've been on the design and build teams since we started for Rush Street Gaming. I look forward to a great conversation today.
Thank you, Joe. So we'll go ahead and get started. Attendees, please remember to submit your questions at any time directly through the Q&A functionality. Feel free to follow along with the questions through the webinar platform. The first question is, how have non-gaming amenities evolved throughout the history of domestic gaming?
Well, I think like the evolution of any product, as it becomes more and more competitive, as it becomes more and more mature, we started doing some of the simple things, adding more food offerings, adding more entertainment offerings, things like that, and it keeps adding. No different than while an automobile is basically the same as it was in the 1950s, you certainly can notice the difference between a car today versus a car back then, and we do the same thing. They're much more sophisticated spaces. We have a much more a deeper understanding of how people interact with those spaces, and what other things can add on to them. Obviously, in the food side of things, we went from rudimentary food offerings, the buffets of the 1980s as it related to Las Vegas gaming, to more refined food offerings, to celebrity chefs, and the experiences we have today. So it continues to evolve. Entertainment, same thing. The entertainment has gone from kind of rudimentary lounge acts to something as sophisticated as the Cirque du Soleil shows that you see here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think for many years when gaming was expanding, a lot of companies had their own brands that they just rebranded at each one of their casinos that they put in the domestic regional markets. And that's evolved to working with big third parties that are national and as well as local third parties. I remember when I was in Las Vegas and you had your first Capriati shop open up in a Stations casino. So you started to have local flavor mixed in with celebrity chefs, mixed in with different experiences, just trying to expand the reasons to come to the casino outside of the slot machines and the tables. So went from internal branding to external branding over the last 20 years.
Thank you, Joe. Our next question is, how do you determine which amenities are appropriate for different market areas?
Yeah, I think we've actually, in that we're not in Las Vegas and we're not in Atlantic City. All of our casinos are in regional markets. We've had to have a mix of some internal brands where we got the right recipes and the right flow patterns for a casino gamer, and then bring in a third party or a local brand. Our most successful local restaurant that we brought in has been Hugo's Chop House at our Des Plaines property. Continues to do multiple double-digit millions of dollars for a steakhouse in a casino, and a lot of the loyal following that we get out of Chicago has been a reason for that success, and we've benefited from it from a food and beverage perspective, experience, and gaming. So it's just a mix of trying to figure out what works within the four walls outside of Las Vegas and Atlantic City.
And to agree with Joe, a lot of the regional projects that we've done have been similar. It's really understanding what that regional culture and tastes are, and then creating venues for it. On several occasions, we've had surprises when we worked on the casinos in Iowa. I happen to be from the Midwest, so it's pretty easy to know, for me to know anyway, what a Midwest customer would want. But you know, those tastes are different than working down in Louisiana, where you're going to have more of a seafood bend or the gumbos and things like that. I do know that at least one of our clients, you know, we were down the path of kind of over-designing a high-end restaurant that really wouldn't have gotten the customers they wanted, because the clientele just didn't want that level of sophistication, simply because it was a rural setting, and understanding where those customers are coming from. At the same point in time, one of the Kansas casino that we did, we found a whole demographic as we were designing it that we weren't expecting. There was an enclave of Asians in the region, and they really wanted to have a food offering that was familiar to them, and we ended up adding that as the design was rather mature. But it was as the marketing and the operations team uncovered what the local demographic wanted or what the local clientele wanted, we were able to shift the design in order to accommodate them as well. So a lot of the stuff is staying nimble and not getting locked into a set path just because that's what you think it's going to be. It changes over time, and certainly, as Joe will tell you, as you start some of these properties up, it takes a while for them to stabilize and secrets reveal themselves.
Yeah, we realized that when we opened up in Pittsburgh, we had to re-engineer most of our food product, even within a restaurant. The buffet offering that we opened with was not something that the Pittsburgh clientele wanted. It was more high-end, kind of like a Bellagio type of feeling, and we needed something that was more regional and the people that in Pittsburgh were more familiar with because of the visitation. It's nice to go to a venue once when you go to Las Vegas, but when you come once or twice a week, we've got to make sure that it resonates with the local community.
So exactly how did you adjust your Pittsburgh offering?
Well, we went and we hired a chef from Pittsburgh. That was the first real win. Who was working in Las Vegas, so he understood high volumes and he understood the palate of the people of Pittsburgh and where he grew up in Western PA. And we went really to a very down-home menu that didn't feature high-end proteins and high-end eclectic foods, more along the lines of beef and potatoes and pastas and something that really resonated in the region. So that really the key there was hiring the right chef because he understood the market, he understood the palate. I think, as Tom said, you know, when you go to these regional markets, you really got to get local familiarity. What works in Las Vegas may not ultimately translate in along the Mississippi or in the Midwest or on the Eastern Seaboard.
Thank you, Joe. Tom, do you have any other examples to shed light on the subject?
Well, there's 30 years of examples, but to Joe's point, it goes back to understanding what that local is, and I do like his point of knowing, you know, hiring a chef that knows the local cuisine, but yet also understands the high volume that you have to deal with in a casino environment simply because of the number of covers. When we're designing these spaces as well, there's been a lot of times when somebody will come in and say, oh, I can do without this, I can do without that, simply because they're used to working in that market, but they're not used to working with some of the volumes that we encounter. And our concern, of course, is that the kitchen gets overwhelmed, or worse, the prep area or the upfront area gets bottlenecked simply because they can't handle the throughput. So it is, in my opinion, wise to find somebody that does have Las Vegas, or it doesn't have to be Las Vegas, but some sort of experience that way, but combining it with the local knowledge, because there is no one-size-fits-all solution here.
Thanks, Tom. Our next question is, how long does it take for non-gaming trends to move from the destination markets to regional or local markets, if ever?
I think the if ever part is more important. What you could do in Las Vegas, because of the visitation and the familiarity that folks have, you can get away with a lot, and the volumes help pay for some of these extravagant restaurants. When I was at the Rio in Las Vegas, we saw a lot of change near the end of my time there, as the restaurants at the Rio started and needed to change as the Strip started bringing on what was cool. And so when it comes to bringing the amenities, the non-gaming amenities to these regional markets, sometimes the wallet's not there in order, because they're not on vacation, and the time, they don't have the time to spend. So it's really been difficult to bring that on in these destination and local markets. I think the things that have worked in the past, like the buffets, are becoming a thing of the past themselves as people become more health conscious. and they want to try different things. It's very difficult to continue to rotate menus in the buffets. We've been trying things like marketplaces. In our Philadelphia expansion, we went totally local in our marketplace. We brought in a great local cheesesteak legend, Geno's Cheesesteaks. We brought in a local family that had one location for a pizza place that was tough to get into, and now you could get it 24 hours a day or whenever we're open business hours, but a lot more access to that product in Tacanelli's Pizza, and then local coffee, Saxby's Coffee. So we put together a little marketplace in Philadelphia in lieu of a buffet, and it's been very successful. People love the familiarity of seeing a Geno Steaks when they're using their comps or when they're spending their cash for a non-gaming amenity.
And I agree with Joe, and I think that's a great strategy, by the way, especially the markets. It certainly is a trend that's going through. I get asked the question a lot of times of, what are the amenities that I should have? And my answer is always very similar. It is really that you have to know what your market is. Certainly, the Chicago market is very different. The Chicago market has both Illinois and Indiana and at least two tribal entities all vying for it. At the same point in time, that market is very different than the tribal casinos that are in northern Wisconsin, which is very different than the tribal casinos operating outside of Minneapolis. So to really kind of predict how long it's going to take is very difficult. Even what is going to take is very difficult, because it really comes down to, as Joe said, the sheer volume of people here in Vegas, 43 million visitors or whatever it's going to be this year, versus a competitive, for example, Southern California market. Some of the casinos in Southern California have tried to emulate some of the facilities here in Las Vegas, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work, simply because of the competition or the volume. And then you add on to that, as Joe had said, where we are in the regional market, in what part of the world or what part of the country rather, and what the competitive set is. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is what's the competitive set, what is the desire or the expectations of your customers, and then crafting a set of amenities that all work together. From a design perspective as well, offering up that collection of offerings in a way that is able to deliver them efficiently is the other piece of this. I was in a casino recently that had 7 kitchens in it, and it was not the size of a Las Vegas casino. It was fairly small, but when you considered how many venues they had and the efficiency that they were trying to put together or to operate under, it really made for some a challenging environment. So how long it takes is more of a function of A, what market you're catering to, and B, what the local tastes and preferences are.
Have you seen anything in Southern California, for example, that has emulated a Las Vegas amenity that has worked?
Well, I think some of the hotel offerings certainly have done it. The meeting rooms and convention side of things have. Certainly the resort feel. You go down the I-10 corridor heading toward Los Angeles, and they've really begun to kind of up their offerings along that corridor. There's a lot of activity in play even now as far as updates and changes. At the same point in time, when nightclubs were all the rage here in Las Vegas, there were several properties that tried to do nightclubs, and they had less than desirable results from it. So it comes down to, really knowing what customer you're trying to attract versus the unintended consequence of getting a customer maybe that you didn't want, because they're not going to convert that into additional wallet. Even though you're going to get additional customer there, you're not going to get additional wallet. And I think certainly the meeting rooms and the hotels and just the resort getaways have taken off in all of those markets. Down in San Diego, they've added the retail components onto it as well. That has gone well for them in that market.
Thank you, Tom. Our next question is, what are some of the most unique and interesting amenity trends within the industry today?
I think Tom pointed out, I think one thing that we're finding comes up often is this marketplace of being able to walk in and try different tastes, and in that this social atmosphere that we know with social media has really taken over how America speaks to each other and how we interact. And to be able to walk into a space with your friends and try different things, or with your family and try different things, I think how you program that marketplace, and the days of the food court with all one storefront that you just share in different kitchens is gone. You have to get very creative, but people want like the food halls, and that I think that's one thing that we're hearing on a regular basis is we want choice, and we want that choice to be varied enough so that we can try something different, because I come here 2 to 3 times a week. Tom, as you know, you look at our numbers and other local markets numbers all the time. The visitation and keeping that fresh is just the struggle, and I think the marketplace is something that's really that's great, that's out there. But everybody's trying to figure out, how do we capture social media and do something that's cool enough to get on social media so we get followed and word of mouth goes that way.
Yeah, I'll agree with Joe, and I'm a firm believer in what has been called the experience economy, and it really is kind of Casino 101. As Joe had said, the market from a food perspective is a great example of it, because it is asocial, it is varied, and there's a variety. It changes every day. It's really what the customers are looking for. I think one of the other amenities that are being added on are these kind of entertainment facilities that then double as places. We did the Topgolf at the MGM here in Las Vegas, and that Topgolf itself is an experience-based venue, but the Las Vegas one is basically that on steroids. And adding in the food component, and adding in, even there where they could, if they chose to, add in a gambling component as well, is really the trend of where I think it's heading. We're currently doing an esports arena here in town as well, and that's not going to be just a esports, e-gaming facility. It's going to be a whole experience in itself. And the goal is to capture those social moments so that your customers are really generating your own buzz for you. And from an architect's perspective or a designer's perspective, it's how do we design that space to maximize the social value for our customers. One of our clients calls them hero moments. It's that selfie that you want. You go all the way back to the Bellagio fountains, and everybody, it's hard to find somebody even in China that doesn't recognize the Bellagio fountains and have a photo of them with the Bellagio logo on the tower behind it. It's a wonderful social mechanism, and that happened to be a happy accident, if you will, because social media wasn't even around when we designed that place. But now, to Joe's point, that's what they want. They want to be able to go into the facility, have a variety. They want it to be in a smaller environment, and they want to be able to boast about it or talk about it.
Yeah, I think to add to that, one of the things I was just at Topgolf during G2E, and one of the things that I was really amazed by, how much effort they put into the food, not just having your regular bar food, but it was quality, and I think that's a trend. Celebrity chefs have been around now for almost 15, 20 years, but one thing is when you put a new food offering out there, it sounds cliche, but the food really has to be good. Atmosphere just won't get you anymore. The cool design of a restaurant is fantastic. People will talk about it, but you really have to have really, really good food, and I think that that's a change. That's a trend. You just can't throw a regular menu item out there without really thinking about how you put it out there and how you present it, and how well people can share shareable food and things like that. Again, in these environments where it's just a social atmosphere where I'm with friends, I think that's something that it's probably 2 or 3 years old now, but it's going to be around for a while because of how Americans interact with each other. The world interacts with each other.
Thank you, Joe. Tom, sort of get back to our previous question about moving from destination to regional. Have you seen any Topgolfs? I know, outside of Las Vegas, we've had some clients look at it, nobody's pulled the trigger.
And again, going back to the G2E conference a couple of weeks ago, yes is the answer to that. There's been any number of tribal entities that have wanted to get and talk to Topgolf. Topgolf as a specific brand has really become a hot commodity in that sense. But then it does go back to what's the right Topgolf, right? Certainly, the one here in Las Vegas is 122,000 square feet. I don't think you need that at a regional facility. The food would be a challenge as well. There's any number of things that you would have to adapt that to, and I think even when you go to their prototype store, which certainly there's, I believe, 30 or 35 of them now around the country, you'd want to, I think, tailor it toward the casino experience as opposed to the standalone experience that they created their market on. I think there's any number of venues that are going to be heading that same direction. Certainly there's now at least 2 Topgolf competitors that are out there, one of which we're talking with, but they're all looking to turn the idea of golf, which from a traditional perspective is 4 hours worth of work, and turn it into something that is much more entertaining, which goes in line with what Joe had said earlier about the dining experience. The advantage that a venue like Topgolf has is that, yes, it is golf, and it can be very much golf to a golf person, but to somebody who isn't a golf person, there's enough entertainment there to make it fun. I've always said it's basically English darts meets target practice or golf, the golf tee experience, in that you can create a whole bunch of activities and competitions, wrap it in food, wrap it in entertainment, and that's what makes it so successful here in Las Vegas. I think that's what would make it successful in any number of other regional areas. Now, does that mean that you put one in the middle of a rural environment at a tribal casino that may or may not have the number of people coming to see it? No, probably not. There's not enough draw there. But at the same point in time, in some of these larger cities, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, any of those larger places, I see it as certainly an amenity that you could add on. And again, we went that way with bowling, right? Bowling has been almost synonymous with casinos for a number of years. We started then kind of tricking it out into the night bowling and the other add-on amenities to it. And I think there's any number of venues that you would be able to add on to a casino and turn them into much more of an entertainment function than they are by themselves and be successful.
Thank you, Tom. Our next question is, how do amenities encourage increased gaming spend from property visitors?
I mean, the way I look at it is if you create a good enough non-gaming environment that can take a customer's entertainment time and extend it, you may extend their gaming and their play. Or if you bring in, like I'll go back to what has been ultra successful for us, having a Gibson's restaurant, Hugo's, in our Des Plaines property really has been, we can't figure out exactly which one is more beneficial, the steakhouse or the casino to the steakhouse, because it just goes hand in hand. It's a high-end market. we're limited in gaming positions, so that property is yielded up really high, and so the steakhouse really makes a lot of sense. But I think if you could extend a customer's time in the building with a non-gaming amenity, then you have the opportunity to extend their gaming on-device time, which obviously will translate into revenue and more win.
And I think working with operators, and that is often an operator questions. One of the things that we ask our operators, because you do have a net effect that comes out of it. We designed one casino in a Midwest market that, working with the operators, we knew the gaming floor would be dead at certain periods of time simply because there weren't enough amenities that we could get around that particular area to keep it activated, and that I think is part of what the challenge is having these non-gaming amenities, these other amenities, helping to activate that area of the casino. And when the place opened, as we were designing it, we knew it would be a problem. The budget mandated that we only had so many creative ways we could solve so many things. When the place opened, it played out, I guess, fortunately or unfortunately, the way that we had predicted, which was that particular area of the casino was the last to activate. But again, from an operations perspective, they were able to change the offering around and bring people in there. They have since added an amenity in that area to be able to activate it. And to Joe's point, you're always looking for time on the property and share of the wallet. And I think there's a net effect. I think each operator measures it differently, but there definitely is an effect there. I've seen it myself in the form of it when there's an absence of one of those amenities that you really know you need in order to activate the casino floor.
And the key also is to watch that. Don't count on it to be the driver. I was at the Flamingo for years, and before the link came in, we had that corner where Margaritaville was a gold mine for years. Eventually the Margaritavilles got replicated throughout Las Vegas. There was different things, and it wasn't the gold mine that it was to draw people to the Flamingo. And until Caesars went and put the link in there, which was very important, that corner, the only reason to go on that corner was to go to Margaritaville for a long time. So you just got to continue to monitor wherever you put what is doing very well and drawing people to different parts of the property to make sure it still does it. And then when you start to see the signs, you call people like Tom and say, hey, we got to go back to the drawing board because we can't lose the amount of money that we're making per square foot in that area. So it takes a lot of monitoring as well, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do amenities impact customer loyalty, and if so, how? And does this differ by socioeconomic status, age, gender, income?
I think for us, what I'm seeing, and again, I'm going back to the premise of the experience economy and really the internet, the world of the internet and what it's done for us. I am personally less about the traditional demographics and much more about psychographics, which is much closer to the socioeconomic status. With these venues, as you design them, what we're seeing is a shift away from, oh well, this appeals to somebody from age 35 to 53, and you start leaning more toward, well, this will appeal to a certain group of foodies, for example, or this will appeal to a certain other demographic or lifestyle, if you will, is a better way of looking at it. I don't know, I'll let Joe speak to whether it impacts the customer loyalty from the long run, but I do know that in order to stay relevant in today's high-paced change, and I almost added it on, Joe, to what you were saying, the only constant right now is change, and the challenge here in these casinos is to predict and understand where your customers are going We live in an interesting time right now where the demographics are shifting, the age is shifting, and the baby boomers are aging out slowly but surely, is easy to predict. But then it comes back to how do we replace it, and to what do we replace it with? YWS, we commissioned a study with GFK out of New York to understand what the shifting nature of the beast is, and one of the things that we found is that the market's no longer homogeneous. It's fragmented and fractured, and I think that's part of the way when you look at this from a demographic perspective, it looks like it's broken up. But if you start to shift it and look at it more toward a socioeconomic or psychographic perspective, it's much more aligned. I'll call it vertically than horizontally, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think to answer the impact on customer loyalty, I think the amenities are something that our customers expect to be there for them when they want them. But customer loyalty is still going to be driven by the relationships that they build with our team members on the floor, the service that they receive, and how well they're treated from a marketing standpoint in terms of reinvestment. I think those are the three keys to driving customer loyalty. I think our customers want our team members to give them great service, and then they want to be reinvested in at the right level. The amenities are additive to keeping them coming, but the amenities really are going to be driving new business, and that's another place where you have to be careful. You make a change in which some of your most loyal customers love what you're doing, and you change it, you're going to hear about it. You're going to hear about it really, really quick when you board up a restaurant. But I'll tell you, just Tom alluded to the Southern California market right now. Everybody's one-upping each other. Pachanga is doing a massive expansion. Paula's now doing that, another expansion. Rincon Valley View. I mean, I worked at Rincon when they did the first tower, and people tell me that if I go back to Rincon today, I wouldn't even know where the front entrance is. It's so different, and that was 10 years ago. So I think it depends on the market and what you have to do in reinvesting in your building to continue to grow your market. But as it relates to customer loyalty, it still boils down to that team member relationship and delivering service and the reinvestment.
And then how can amenities be used to attract new gaming customers?
I think we've been talking about this the whole time. And really, everybody wants to grow revenues, and there needs to be a whole new cultivation of gamers out there. Millennials, there's all the argument on both sides. You need to get them through e-gaming, iGaming, all the different ways. Or, do you believe in what I've heard at the East Coast Gaming Conference last year, that millennials are going to get married, they're going to want to stay home with their kids, and they're going to stop going out for at least 10 to 15 years. It's that pre-retirement group of people who, because of social media today, don't necessarily want to go to a buffet, a movie theater, or go bowling. They want to go meet with their friends after work and have a drink and take a selfie and share it and stay, I guess, for lack of a better term, young. And so really it's finding the market that you want to go for, because we have limited budgets, and then really doing what you decide to do really, really well. And that takes thought, and that takes collaboration with folks like yourself, that Tom Zitt, who give us the numbers, and Tom, the designers who design something cool. And then I have an owner that says, don't spend too much money while you're doing it, but drive a lot of revenue. So it's a balance. It's an important balance, but first comment I heard in gaming 20 years ago, the only thing that's static is change. It's going to change on a regular basis.
So, Joe, it sounds like business as usual from my perspective.
Yeah.
The owners want everything they can get and don't want to spend a lot of money, which is pure economics. I think, to your point, both of those models are accurate in our research. The interesting thing about the research that we came across, or that we commissioned, was that yes, the market is fragmented, but it also does, to your point, Joe, cater to where they are in their life stage. Again, the younger generation is delaying both marriage and having children. So you've got an opportunity to get them while they're young, but they're certainly not going to be playing on the slot machines because, you know, whether they've gotten to that point or not is debatable, and they probably haven't. They don't look at a casino as someplace where they quote unquote belong, because that's where serious gambling goes on, and they don't perceive themselves as serious gamblers. However, they are huge into the entertainment side, they're huge into the food side, they're huge into all these other amenities that we design into the casinos on a regular basis. Then they seem to go into more of a preference for simple games. Why? They've got kids, they've got spouses, they've got all kinds of other things that are taking time slots. They don't have nearly as much free time. They don't have nearly as much discretionary spending that they can do, so that shifts them into another place in their evolution. And I think all of that stuff is what you have to consider. And certainly what that means is if you're designing a casino in a market like Austin, Texas, which there isn't one for obvious reasons, you would design it very different than you would either in Southern California or outside of a retirement community, because your demographics aren't there, and your psychographics aren't there. So it does go back to one of the earlier questions of how do you design these things, but it also means that you have to design to attract those customers once you know what your market is and what they want.
Yeah, and I think as online gaming becomes more and more prevalent, the gaming energy and the excitement out of gaming, because you could do it at home, when you actually go to a casino, you're going to want an experience. That's going to evolve over the next 5 to 10 years. I could play Mr. Cashman at home, or Party Poker at home, or even blackjack and all those other things eventually in more states. Then when I actually decide to get in my car and go to the casino, it has to be an event. It has to be a little bit more than just getting in there for an hour and a half to 2 hours and playing a machine or playing some blackjack. I'm here, I want to have a good time, I want people to know that I'm here, I want to post it on Facebook. I think that's our challenge for the folks that are listening here. And what do we do in 5 to 10 years where the gaming is no longer that top driver?
Yes, and I agree with that. I think it's going to follow a similar path to what retail has done, and I think we're getting ahead of ourselves in that regard, Joe, but I think you're absolutely correct. And part of the challenge for me as designer, part of the challenge for you, part of the challenge for all three of us on this is, how do you predict where that's going to be, Tom? And Joe, how are you going to, what's your customer going to do in that environment? Because I'm certainly looking at how are we going to design that space. It's going to look very different than what it does today.
This sort of brings us to our last question. So I'm going to sort of jump ahead so we can leave time for the audience questions. So how do you see amenities changing over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think they have to be social. I think that Topgolf is a great example. I think they have to be social. I think the regular sit-down restaurant, come in, see a hostess, white tablecloth or fast casual or quick casual, that's going to need to be there in some capacity, but it needs to be coupled with a social environment to where you're not going to be that steakhouse where it's quiet and the little candle is lit. People are going to want an environment where there's communal tables and different things like that. Also, you need to be able to cater to that VIP player that wants to be left alone. It's a challenge, but if I had to pinpoint one thing that has to happen, whatever you design, it needs to be high energy, social, and it has to be able to attract all these different socioeconomic groups. That's a tough challenge, I know, but that's really what it's going to have to be. I mean, if you watch the gentrification of downtown Pittsburgh right now with all the new restaurants that are coming up in downtown Pittsburgh, they have one thing in common: quick, shareable plates where people are enjoying themselves, and it's okay to stand around for half an hour to an hour around the bar waiting for your table for your 6 to 10 friends to join. I think that's where we're going.
And I agree with you 100%, Joe. And I think it's going to be even more to where, the size of our facilities. Now, the overall size of the facility may stay the same, but the venues, I think, are going to get smaller for exactly that reason. I would bet, Joe, that a lot of what you're seeing as far as the gentrification that you spoke of, these are going to be smaller restaurants. They are going to be more intimate spaces. They're places where, the customers aren't afraid to wait. They will wait for an experience that they think is worthwhile. But again, to Joe's point, having a large steakhouse with 120 seats or something ridiculous in it is probably going to be a thing of the past. We're going to start making these things smaller as they go, but at the same point in time, that doesn't mean that we can't have multiple dining experiences within a restaurant, or multiple restaurants that all come out of one kitchen, so that you're not duplicating and triplicating some of the food prep areas, but certainly much more intimate, much more cozy, yet communal. The term inclusive exclusivity has been thrown out there. So if you wrap your head around inclusive exclusivity, it's the shareable moments. This is mine. These are my 10 minutes. I'm going to share them with my 6 good friends. I'm going to tweet about them to everybody I know. And that's the way we have to design these new casinos, or the casinos of the future. I think the other thing that we have to address, and this is going to have to happen over time, is what happens on what is effectively the negative space that we have always put the slot machines in. Traditional casino design has, a large gaming floor that has a bunch of amenities around the perimeter of it, and it's really the negative space that creates the casino floor. I think part of where the younger generation gets intimidated is by those big open spaces that we have to start making a little bit more cozy, a little bit more friendly from their perspective, so that they're not just out there in the middle of a 90,000 square foot or a 70,000 square foot or even a 50,000 square foot negative space, but they're actually in a designed, built, specifically built environment. And I think a lot of, to Joe's credit, that's where this is going to go, and we as designers have to be able to, I guess, carefully put in there, because if we go too fast, we're going to alienate the customers that we have, and certainly no operator wants to reacquire customers once they've lost them, because sometimes you have to grovel. I don't know how difficult that is, Joe. That's your job, but certainly as a designer, we don't want to design something that alienates the existing customer base, and even worse, alienates the existing customer base yet doesn't attract the new customer. I mean, that's a lose-lose. So we're going to have to carefully work with both your organizations to come up with what's the right mix and what's the right timing for it.
I think key to that message is collaboration and thought, and making sure that you don't get caught up. I think Tom made a mention earlier of making a change when a process was in a very mature part. You thought you have the right answer, and then you find out you don't. You can't be afraid to scrap it to make it right. The worst thing you could do is go out there with the wrong amenity because you were so tied to it that you felt you had to do it because you had invested $500,000 in the development and the design so far, and it's not right. You still go and open it. So it's a collaborative effort. I think that's one of the things that I've learned so much from the organization that I work for today. Doesn't matter where you work in our organization, you're going to be asked your opinion, and we have people all ages that work for us, and all different experiences. And by asking and listening, you sometimes come up with the right formula. Sometimes you miss, but I think it's okay to say you missed and go out there and address it. Don't be so tied to it that you're not willing to make change.
I'm going to switch now to the audience questions. First question from the audience is, what will the major changes to the casino floors B, to encompass the new technology, mobiles, smart apps, sports betting, social media, that is affecting consumer behavioral change and threatening the visitation cycles.
Well, I think from my perspective, I had touched on it a little bit already in that I think we need to make the zones, right now, when you look at the slot banks and how we fill a casino floor, I think with the variety of games that we're going to be seeing, whether those are handheld devices, whether it's a bring your own device down the line, whether it's a new offering from one of the traditional or even one of the new vendors that have come into the market with the skills-based gaming, I think it's a matter of creating an environment that next generation is comfortable in. And I think you have to be conscious of, for example, if you have, if your main clientele is still that group of baby boomers that is looking to play traditional slot machines, that you don't simply try to put in a couple of games of skill and say, well, let's see if the young guys want to pick this up and play, because you haven't put it in an environment that matches the new game itself. And I think that's part of it, is you can't just take out a machine, put a new machine in, and hope you attract new customers, because the design sensibilities of that new customer is different than the design sensibilities of an existing one. You can't take a steakhouse, take off the white tablecloths, to one of Joe's points earlier, take off the tablecloths, take off the four tops, put a bunch of communal benches in there and call it a brew house without changing the base decor in some way, shape, or form. Now, you'd have to change a little bit in the kitchen, you got to change some decor, you got to make the environment something new, but the point being is you can't just swap out tables and say, okay, this is something new. Your customers see through that. They're sophisticated and smart enough to see through that.
Yeah, and as it relates to the gaming floor, I think Tom's point earlier is something that we're discussing right now in one of our properties as it starts to hit almost 10 years, creating zones of environments that are going to be dramatically different. Zones for your core gamer, zones for your occasional gamer, and zones for those that want to try something new and different. And if you got the space to do it, it's great. If you got a 100,000 square foot casino, you could actually probably do that by creating the right aisleways, overhead signage, light fixtures, different things like that can get you different zones. And then you put the amenities around those zones that appeal to the players that you're trying to attract in those zones. That's where we think we're going as we look at this and as we collaborate with our designers. We know it's coming, and we're looking at like literally creating 4 or 5 mini casinos without the 4 walls within one casino floor, and then putting the amenities adjacent to them that'll appeal to that. I'll give you one quick example. Your VIP lounge versus your high visitation player that warrants some sort of respite place are becoming 2 different things. Your VVIP lounge is something where they want a personal touch and probably a little bit higher level of service versus come in and get a free sandwich and a soda and a cheap beer for your high-frequency customer that needs a little bit more of attention. You're going to want to put those lounges in different places on that floor. So that's kind of what we're trying to conceive right now, is these different zones for different customer bases.
We've been calling that concept microenvironments, Joe, and it's kind of an oxymoron, because you're still talking about 10 to 20,000 square feet when it's all said and done. But in the context of 100 or 200,000 square feet, it's still, in the traditional gaming sense, it is a microenvironment. And to your point, you have to put the amenities around those that then appeal to that demographic or that psychographic that you're trying to attract. You can't just carve out a piece of your traditional casino outside of a whatever steakhouse or noodle shop and say, okay, there's my new environment. You do have to start looking at these, I'll call it holistically, but certainly holistically as a market segment. That's really what you got to look at it as. and what goes around that particular area to create its own microcosm, if you will, of gaming activity. And I think that's the direction this is going to go. Sounds like it's already started in Joe's company, which is great.
Thank you, guys. I have a pair of questions here. Joe, sounds probably more like for you to respond to. First, is there an option to hire a food consultant to ensure you identify the right menu mix? And can you also speak to the following, the brand of the casino operations for new venues or amenities that come online?
We've used food consultants in the past. They come with a lot of knowledge, and you know, they get, as a food consultant or any consultant that you use, they're ultra focused on that part of their business. So it's been helpful in the past. And if you can find a local food consultant that really knows what's going on in the market, you're really in a local gaming environment. You could really get double bang for your buck. However, I think if you pay attention to your local team that is working in that market, and you could watch market trends and watch social media in that market for what they're going, what people are going to try it and what was really working, that works too. I think what you're finding now, though, is as opposed to consultants, there's a lot of local hospitality groups that are no longer these large groups, but they're ultra local. They're opening up multiple venues in their market, and that is, if you could partner with them, they already got lists of their loyal customer. They already know what their loyal customer palette is. They are the best source of information on what you want to build. And then again, they think you have the endless pocketbook because you're the casino. They're going to want to build that palace that they dream of. So it's a balance of that. But that local hospitality group as a partnership, you may give up a little bit of revenue in your venue, but what you get from a gaming perspective of bringing in a new market is you're getting it back tenfold. And I didn't understand the second question. Branding?
Tom,
Sorry,
you're on mute.
Sorry, I've been having a lot of construction noise in the background here. Can you also speak to the brand of the casino operations? I guess the question is, how do you translate the casino brand to new venues or amenities that come online?
I think that's a good question. I think you have to follow. You know, we operate under two names: the Rivers brand and the Sugar House. But Rivers brand, really what we've tried to build are high quality casinos that have a great design but are contemporary and make sense in the market. So they're all different. They're not cookie cutter in any way, shape, or form, but they all have a concentric way of thinking about gaming versus the amenities. That has to play a part, but we, in particular, as it relates to our gaming floor and our restaurants and other amenities, we specifically use two different interior designers to do that because we want a good tension of what it feels like going from the casino into one of our venues. I don't know if I answered that question exactly the way somebody wanted it, but we make sure that the venues are very high quality, good, a great environment, and comfortable, but we specifically use two different designers to design and they work great together, but the two of them truly have different styles, and the restaurants are much different than the casino floor.
Tom, one of the things I'd like to reinforce is the one thing that Joe had said too about food consultants. We use them as well on various venues. Sometimes they're hired by us as a consultant, sometimes they're hired by the client. And certainly on the Topgolf project, working with the group that helped them with the menu, and really tailoring that menu to the activities that we're going to be within Topgolf is important. But to Joe's point as well about not letting the space get over designed is important. I've seen certainly here in Las Vegas, and I'm sure it happens in other places, where you take a concept and you get so enamored, if you will, with the concept that you lose sight of the customer, and you almost end up alienating the customer because you've overshot what they really want. And I think you just have to be careful with that as a whole, so that you don't get, quote unquote, carried away with it.
Thank you, Tom. And we have one last audience question. Understanding that every regional market is different, for those gaming venues that have traditionally been adult only, what amenities have been effective in transitioning to a family kids welcome venue?
We haven't concentrated on that. All of our non-gaming amenities are within the casino at all of our properties, and we are in the two markets that are so highly regulated in Pennsylvania and Illinois in terms of fines for under 21. We've just shied away from it altogether. Even in New York, when we designed New York, our hotel and event center was specifically designed far away from the gaming floor to just not even attempt to enter that market. Tom, I'm sure you've had a lot of different experience in that.
Yeah, this is another one of those where it's difficult to make a one size fits all answer here. But for example, one of the projects that we worked on, it was a U.S. Southwest, and the quinceañeras were big. So we clearly had to get a way to get meeting rooms and meeting rooms and party facilities and restaurants in a way that you could bring in underaged kids specifically, children specifically, and not have them crossing the casino floor or even getting anywhere near the casino floor. So we really did create kind of two entrances to the facility, one for the adults and one for minors or a mixed audience. They also had the need for doing a lot of weddings as well, and that brought the same challenges to them. But we had the food court, we had movie theater, we had bowling alley that we had designed, although it never got built to my knowledge. Meeting rooms and the hotel were off to the side, yet still closely enough and adjacent enough to the gaming floor, and then the gaming floor had other amenities as well in order to still create a cohesive design solution where you had the interactions between the various amenities that still worked. You know, one of the biggest challenges is always going to be in the markets where you cannot have underaged people on your gaming floor, and it comes down to how do you get circulation to work in a way that doesn't crisscross or doesn't impact either one of those venues negatively, to where you have the challenge of the operations guys trying to keep kids off the floor and the fines that come with it versus making it a hassle for the gaming customer to get in. And there's any number of ways you can do that with defined circulation routes, with secondary entrances and the placement of the entrances, as well as how you service the restaurants and the other amenities. You know, and again, it comes down to just what mix do you want. As I mentioned, something like a Topgolf could have gaming in it, certainly here in Las Vegas, because it's part of the gaming district here. In other places, that wouldn't work if you wanted under minors to be able to use that facility. At the same point in time, you've got a drinking age that you have to deal with, and you've got a similar problem or a similar challenge to that. And there is no one size fits all. It's a matter of working with operations and working with both the existing footprint that you have, or if you've got a clean slate, how you set these things up in order to keep those challenges, those conflicts is really what they are, to a minimum. and gracefully solving them.
Yeah, and I would just add that for an example of a property that doesn't shy away from the family market, the Wind Creek Casino in Atmore, Alabama, they went sort of full bore after the family market, and it's worked pretty well for them, I think. Well, we have sort of run over time, and I appreciate everybody's patience. Wanted to make sure we answered all the audience questions. Thank you so much, Tom and Joe, for spending an hour with us. We appreciate all your insights, and thank you, Marie, for the technical support. And attendees, please be sure to visit the innovationgroup.com for more information on emerging leaders, as well as our firm, and follow us on social media. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, and we hope it was an informative and insightful hour for everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Joe and Tom, thank you so much. That was great.
You're welcome. Good meeting everybody.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.